in this. I don't know if Ted Czech does Bee Gees, but Ted Czech this morning, former journalist, author of Saving the Beast, a recovering report, reflects on America's broken media and how to fix it. Good morning, Ted. How are you?
Hey, Gary. Yeah, I'm always singing falsetto, just not on the radio.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you have the good decency to keep it to yourself, and not us. That's why we are semi-professionals here, Ted. We don't get the.
Right.
You're a professional. We're semi-professionals, and anyway, great to have you in this morning, my friend. How you doing?
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, you had a couple different items you wanted to talk about today, and I found both of them very intriguing. So I'm going to give you a little room to do some open field running here, but I do want to remind people to check out your book, Saving the Beast, a recovering report reflects on America's broken media and how to fix it. And also, Ted and I did about a week or two ago, we did a podcast together, which is yet to be printed, but it will be up on the podcast. It's Just a Voice on Main Street, so keep checking it out on YouTube, and you'll see it up there. Just wanted to mention that, too, Ted, in case you thought I put you on witness protection. So there you go.
I'm eagerly anticipating it, Gary.
Me too.
Definitely.
And I know millions of people will be jumping into that. So there you go. But anyway, tell us a little bit about the whole 60 Minutes thing that happened this week.
Right. So the top executive at 60 Minutes, his name is Bill Owens. He abruptly quit the show this week. He says and the reason he did it, he can't go on anymore because he feels he's being hamstrung, I guess, by the people above him. And he cited a lack of journalistic independence. But the thing is, behind the scenes, we've got President Trump's lawsuit with 60 or CBS, or actually above that, the parent company is Paramount. It's a $20 billion lawsuit over the deceptively edited, or some would say deceptively edited CBS interview with Kamala Harris. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember it, yeah.
Yeah. So he says that Trump says that was election interference. And I went back and forth with a guy on LinkedIn this week because the guy's got a big problem with the lawsuit because he said, well, Trump's a sitting president. I said he wasn't when he filed the lawsuit. He was a candidate, and he's saying that that this deceptive editing could possibly have swayed the election.
Yeah.
But what Owens might be referring to is that Paramount, she's a chairwoman, Sherry Redstone.
Yes.
She said something, she made a statement right after he quit, but she's been making statements prior to his leaving the show about, hey, freedom of the press doesn't mean you get free reign to just do whatever you want, and only putting one side of the story. I don't know if that for her includes deceptive editing, but that's kind of the implication there. This is all very interesting stuff. We'll have to see how this lawsuit pans out because it could have very broad and deep implications for journalism.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see what's happening here because the pressures that are on Paramount Global have basically said its controlling shareholder, who's Sherry Redstone, and the managers of one of the company's most valuable properties, which is the 60 Minutes, at odds with each other, as you've described. And it's going to be really interesting to see where this ends up. Sherry Redstone is a controlling shareholder of Paramount Global. And she basically, I guess, has taken increasing interest in 60 Minutes in recent months, where she had not before. And they said she did so as she attempts to navigate the sale of the company, known for owning CBS, the Paramount Movie Studio, to Skydance Media, which is controlled by entrepreneur David Ellison. And they say the sale, follow the money here, will be life-changing for Paramount, which has lagged behind its contemporaries and its audiences migrate away from once powerful cable networks like MTV and TV Land, and it will help Redstone maintain her family's fortune. See, the last line is the most important one there, maintain her family fortune. But,
sure.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So what do you take away from that whole deal right there with 60 Minutes and obviously with Bill Owens?
Well, you're right about the money. I mean, money changes everything. I believe who was that? Cyndi Lauper? Money changes everything?
Yeah, something
I don't
like
know.
That. There you go. You gonna sing that?
Yeah. It's the ultimate motivator and the ultimate game changer. And so I think it sounds like Paramount wants to get rid of this lawsuit and maybe settle quickly so that they can continue on with the sale of the company. Because right now it's kind of an anchor that's dragging them down. But we come back, and then I come back to Bill Owens leaving. It's just where you fall on this in your opinions on how the press should operate.
Right.
He's saying it's a lack of journalistic independence. Others would say, no, it's actually more of like let's get you back to true journalism, where as I've said many times on your program here, it's getting it back to integrity and objectivity and being accurate and being fair.
I was reading.
That's some would say we're gonna kind of return to this equilibrium that we had before.
I was reading this piece in Variety today, and it said Owens' departure, along with various staff rumblings that have accompanied it, is seen as a smoke signal of sorts to Redstone, a cautionary note about what could happen to the program if it's not allowed to continue in truly independent fashion. Other prominent personnel have also been vexed. Quote, I have been made aware of interference in our news processes and calling into question our judgment, unquote. That, according to Leslie Stahl, longtime correspondent. She told Variety that during an interview on Tuesday, then went on to say, quote, that is not the way the companies that own news organizations should be acting, unquote. So there you see the battle right there and the tensions between the two parts of this whole thing. You also had an Amish story this morning you wanted to tell that really hasn't been covered much by the media. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I do have an Amish story. So we love the Amish.
We do.
And as many of us have witnessed, they're incredibly gifted with the way that when it comes to construction, when it comes to building barns,
absolutely,
houses, that they're efficient, they're effective, they're fantastic at it. So a group of them, I've heard as many as 2,000 of them have journeyed from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, because we know that area was devastated by Hurricane Helene, and they're just really helping out and really doing a great job of getting the communities there in North Carolina back up and running. But according to the Gateway Pundit, now that's a conservative website, but what they're saying is no national media has covered this. And so I did my own online search and pretty much found that to be the case. There's local affiliates that have covered it, and that's great, but no national, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, none of the national, news organizations have jumped onto it, and that's unfortunate. And then I think about, well, why is that? One could argue that maybe it's because the Amish are known as being conservative, and overwhelmingly they voted for President Trump, so they don't deserve the press.
Wow.
But the other, well, go ahead.
I guess they also figure that maybe they're not going to get the readership from the Amish that maybe you get because they kind of cloister themselves away from the world in a lot of ways, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of people find them fascinating.
They do. There's a great article this week out of the New York Daily Record, by the way, I was reading about with the Amish, that they only go to school for 8 years. They got in some trouble, by the way, back around 1972 when the education department said, hey, what's going on here? These people are only going to school 8 years. And then they came back and they had this whole school versus their religion versus their way of life. And I guess it was 1972. I'm trying to think what the guy's name was Yoder, strangely enough. I mean, Yoder is like one of the names that you hear with the Amish all the time. And it was 1972, Wisconsin versus Yoder, which reached the Supreme Court. And the justices ruled in favor of the Amish education system, which allowed a child's education to end after the 8th grade. And the court's decision was rooted in the American right to freedom of religion. And so what they do is they go to work right away after that to get used to what hard work is really all about. And fascinating people, as you said. But we were just talking the other day about this. I was on the golf course with somebody, and somehow this came up about the Amish. A friend of mine. I was having dinner the other night. That's it. My friend of mine named Rich Weeder, who hauls the Amish around because a lot of them don't drive their own cars and vehicles. He basically gets them around to various things. He has all kinds of trucks and stuff and helps them with various jobs. He said a fascinating, neat group of people, but they really band together in their community to help each other and move around. And here they're leaving and going down and helping a whole lot of people who are devastated by the floods in North Carolina, which is a great story. But and you would think it would be out there a little bit more than it is, but it's not. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, and sometimes good news. That's what happens to good news. You know, we have a saying, and I know you're familiar with it. If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
So if it's terrible, devastating news, you know, it's like the train wreck that you can't help but watch. Looky-loos. You know, when you see something on the highway, you got to look at it. So it could be that the recovery of a disaster is not nearly as sexy as the devastation itself.
You know, we love good news in our show. We love to talk about it. We love to bring it up.
Yeah.
And I wonder about what is there a reason? Do you think it's a concerted reason, or is it just the fact that seems kind of like, that's so, every day, that's so Pollyannish, it's so boring. Why would media, and I'm not saying anybody's making a concerted effort to block this out, don't get me wrong, but why would media not want to cover something like this? Why would this not be a good story to make you feel good? Is just have we become so involved with the national politics and all that this isn't even on the choice list anymore? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that I don't think it was a concerted effort to ignore them. I think it's just, it like you said, it wasn't on the media's radar. I think it'd be perfect for, the end of kind of the nightly news. The last story that they do is kind of a feel-good story, kind of a lighter story, and on a high note. This would be perfect for that. But I just think the national media just kind of moves in a pack, and it moves around the country. Whatever's hot, that's what they're covering. And so they had moved on, I think, from Helene. They covered it well when it occurred, and shortly thereafter, and then they moved on. I think that's just the way that it goes, so this kind of coverage, the continuing coverage is left to the local affiliates. But yeah, it is a shame that the mainstream or the national press didn't pick it up. Hopefully they will. Hopefully they'll give it some coverage, because as far as I know, they're still there.
And I was reading this article, as I was saying. It's funny you brought this up this morning, because I read this article, and this guy Yoder says, hey, he said, one of the things that happens after 8 years of education, you then go out, you learn how to be a productive citizen of your community, your family, and your church in those next few years. You learn a trade, you learn how to work with your hands, and for him that meant working in his father's sawmill, then for a construction company. So, you think now and then, you talk about practical, here's practical, that a lot of these kids that come out of college and stuff now, maybe if we had a little bit more of the practical side added in with the other side, maybe that might not be a bad combination for success, right?
I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, I wish I had more of that, knew how to fix things, take things apart, put them back together. That would have been great. I'm always impressed when I find out. Like a buddy of mine from college, his dad owned a service station and a garage. It was kind of a combination. You don't see too much anymore. But he learned about cars, just by hanging out at the garage and learning from his dad and everything. And that's something that he, continues to use to this day.
And rounding right back to where you started with in this story, this guy Yoder, as I was reading this morning, his life took an unexpected turn after you went through all those things I just mentioned, and a pleasant turn when he received the opportunity to earn an undergraduate degree from Ohio State University, then was accepted into a graduate program at Yale. Even after his education, the lessons he learned from the plane life have stayed with him. He said, the last two houses that we had, I built myself. I learned that in those years between the ages of 13 and 20, he said that was a time where he really learned a lot about life. So, it goes back to what you said, building a house. Well, he built it himself, but in this case, a whole lot of people are down helping people who, were really under it after the floods in North Carolina. Great stories this morning, Ted. Good stuff. Thank you so much. And I do want to remind people to check your book out. They can go out and find it at any good bookstore right now. It's called Saving the Beast. A recovery report reflects on America's broken media and how to fix it. It's a great book, great read. Ted Czech, Czech. Check it out. Former journalist and author, and with us every week here, proudly on the Gary Sutton Show. Hey, my friend, have a great weekend.
Okay, thanks, Gary. You too.
Take care. Ted Czech here this morning on WOYK. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Mark's got